Hi, I'm Dr. Carolyn Davidson with Elliot Cardiovascular Consultants. So we've been talking a lot about the Mediterranean diet, and I know you guys think that this is just a way for me to shove a bunch of vegetables down your throat. But today I'm actually going to show you how to make a dessert that I like to make. It's really great and very healthy, and it's loaded with, you guessed it, vegetables. So I'm going to make some carrot cake muffins, and basically you can follow any carrot cake recipe online. I tend to basically double the amount of carrots it calls for. A lot of recipes call for some chopped walnuts or chopped pecans or raisins or pineapple. I don't particularly care for those things. Sometimes I do put blueberries or really dark chocolate chips in some carrot cake muffins, but generally, I kind of am a purist when it comes to carrot cake muffins. My husband doesn't like crunchy things in the middle of his food. So let me show you how I typically do it. So you start with dry ingredients and wet ingredients, and you sort of keep them separate and you mix them all together at the end. So the first thing is you get about 2 to 3 cups of grated carrots. So I put a bunch of them in my food processor, but just to show you how you can do this old-fashioned grater carrot and go nuts. So that was about 1 carrot, and it comes up with about a cup of when you squish it together. So this ends up being about 3 cups of pretty squashed together carrot. And then I'm gonna put the rest of the wet ingredients in here. So it calls for 2 eggs. And I got a little shell in there, which is why a lot of people do it separately, but I'm a lazy person, so I kept it shell-free on that one. And then it calls for 3/4 cup of oil. So the way that I typically do when I'm making things is I split the difference between applesauce and oil. So you can use any vegetable oil, canola oil, avocado oil, the olive oil, which the Mediterranean diet's sort of based on, it's got a very strong flavor. So typically it's harder to bake with. So instead of 3/4 cups of vegetable oil, I'm gonna do a 1/2 cup of applesauce and a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. And then it calls for 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So just toss that in there. And you want to make sure your eggs are sort of mixed up before you put your flour in there, because you don't want to over mix your flour. It makes your flour really tough. So we're going to mix that together. And it already smells delicious thanks to that vanilla. And just put it on the side. I'm going to grab another bowl. So now I like to mix the dry ingredients. So I typically make a mix of whole wheat flour and all-purpose flour. I do both because you get a lot more nutritional value for the whole wheat flour, but it can be a little bit kind of overwhelming and very weedy if you do it all wheat flour. So the wheat flour has 14% protein, whereas the whole all-purpose flour is more like 11%. So it's definitely a health benefit, and you're aiming for more whole grains. So sort of split the difference, and you get a lot of nutritional value adding the whole wheat flour. So I do about a 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour, and then 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, about a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and 1/3 cup of dark brown sugar. And then I do a teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, give it a little flavor. And then this is the one place where you can't really skimp on salt, in my experience. If you mess with salt in a recipe, it just never turns out quite the same. So this is a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, then it is a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. And all of those are going to help your flour rise. So you're going to want to mix those together sort of gently. Get everything sort of mixed together nicely. And then you're going to mix your dry ingredients into your wet ingredients, but you don't want to over mix it, because if you over mix it, it's going to stiffen your flour and make it really, really like thick and heavy. That's the problem with gluten. If you're doing a gluten-free flour, you can mix to your heart's content. So you'll see that with all the carrot I put in here, it's really carroty. The carrot adds a lot of sugar and a lot of moisture. So this is definitely a carrot-heavy carrot cake, but it'll be amazing. So just sort of mix it up like that. Then we're gonna add it into our already sprayed, just plain old vegetable spray. And I'm gonna divide this among 12 of these, and we'll put it in a preheated 350-degree oven. All right, so I had my muffins in a 350-degree oven for 20 minutes. I took it out. They look perfect. They are nice and golden, and I put a little toothpick in there to make sure the toothpick comes out clean, which is how you make sure it's clean. You'll see that I have my butter and my mascarpone cheese sitting at room temperature waiting to make frosting. So as soon as these are nice and cool, we'll make the frosting. All right, so our cupcakes are out of the oven. So now I'm gonna make the frosting. So I do really light on the frosting, about, I don't know, less than a tablespoon or a tablespoon on each of the cupcakes. I'm gonna make a mascarpone or mascarpone, however you like to pronounce it, buttercream frosting. So I use 2 ounces of butter that's at room temperature. Then I use 4 ounces of mascarpone, however you pronounce it, cheese, and then use about 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. I sift this first because I think it makes it really nice and smooth. So I put this all together, and then it's all at room temperature, and I beat it. After you incorporate it together, I put about a tablespoon of milk and a 1/2 teaspoon to a teaspoon of vanilla extract in, and just dump that in there. And then you just mix it up for 1 to 2 minutes. All right, so I've mixed this up for about 1 to 2 minutes. It's really thick, very fluffy. This is kind of the consistency that you're going for. So I use, I don't know, the equivalent of a tablespoon or so, maybe 2 on each muffin. And you're just gonna kind of smear it on top. You can pipe it if you want, but I'm not really fussy and sort of just eat it no matter what. So, and there you go. And it's amazing. Now, here's the best part about the Mediterranean diet. It's not restrictive. It doesn't say you can't have dessert, you can't have cupcakes. It says less of the bad stuff, more of the good stuff. So you can take really any recipe at all, just add more of the good stuff. So if you have a zucchini bread recipe, double the amount of zucchini in it. Instead of adding chocolate chips, add blueberries to it. Instead of having tons of frosting on top, just make a lighter frosting and have less of it. So there are lots of ways to have lots of delicious, fun stuff without making it so overwhelmingly terrible for you. So instead of buying processed cupcakes at home or at the grocery store, make them at home, and then you'll get a lot of the benefit without all of the junk. All right, enjoy.